She strolled in, humming out of tune, the habitual melodic attempt to maintain an illusion of normalcy. Her keys clinked in one hand while her phone was pressed against her ear with the other. Yes, yes, he doesn't have the slightest clue, she chuckled, then glanced at me, seated at the dining table. Her gaze shifted towards me like a cautious mosquito, sensing an impending swat. I remained unmoved, unblinking. She halted. "I'll get back to you," she whispered into the phone, stowing it away in her bag as if it were an illicit device concealed during daylight. Then followed the smile, a practiced, crooked one. "Hey, love," she said, traversing the room nonchalantly, seemingly oblivious to the internal turmoil. "How was your day at work?" She planted a kiss on my cheek. I felt her lips, but there was no genuine heat behind them. No substance, only a thin layer of tension, like a sticky note peeling off from glass. Emily excelled in her roles: wife, interior designer, social media celebrity. However, for the past few months, she had been performing in a different sphere. She transitioned from a charming rom-com heroine to a character straight out of a suspenseful, gradually unfolding deception movie. And fortunately for me, I had the prime viewing spot. We met 7 years ago when she accidentally spilled coffee on my shirt in an Asheville bookstore. She claimed it was fate. We got married 2 years later, then purchased this townhouse 4 years after that. We shared a dog named Teddy and rotated throw pillows she believed required seasonal updates. For a long time, it all seemed genuine, but now everything about her appeared artificial. Her laughter came at predictable intervals, and her gaze seldom met mine. The first major fault line occurred 2 weeks ago. She left her laptop open in the kitchen. She never did that. She always treated it like a secret vault. Yet that morning she overlooked closing it. Inquisitiveness didn't spare the cat. It pushed him off a precipice. A notification from Google Photos popped up, auto-sync enabled, and there it was. "Dear friends, if you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you." Photo from a rooftop bar. Two individuals, one sporting a goatee and a garish gold chain, another with an overly close facial expression, their hands interacting. Not of us, not remotely. The caption read, "Amazed we finally crossed paths. You're even more captivating in person. Air kisses." This post wasn't meant for me. I didn't erupt in anger or frustration. Instead, I fixated on the image as if it had rearranged the room's spatial dimensions. An hour later, she appeared downstairs, and I was back to nursing coffee, feigning ignorance of the marriage's apparent course change and conflagration. That day, I began to observe, like a corner-mounted camera, merely watching events unfold. 3 nights ago, an inadvertent story surfaced on her close friends. A rooftop lounge, champagne, Miami skyline. She'd informed me she was visiting her mother in Portland. Then came the slip. 2 glasses clink. She turns the camera. He leans in, smiles, touches her face, and she doesn't retreat. Story vanished in less than 10 minutes. Her response was indifference that bordered on irritation and making me contemplate destroying drywall. Oh my goodness, are you actually tracking my Instagram now? That wasn't mine. It belonged to someone else. I must have shared it accidentally. "Shared a selfie with an unfamiliar man?" I inquired calmly. Too composed. She merely blinked and scoffed. "Don't be so jealous." Jesus, Jake. The conversation was over before it began. She departed, chuckling at her phone. It was then that a part of me shattered, not like a branch, but dislocated like a shoulder torn from its socket. In our overly neat kitchen, I recognized that I wasn't living with my wife. I was cohabiting with a stranger who knew my passwords, drank from my mugs, and used my last name as if it were a costume. So I silently packed a bag, passport, 2 shirts, chargers. Nothing sentimental. I also posted a story, a photo of a one-way ticket to Prague. 14 hours till boarding. No caption, no tag, only a timestamp. She accidentally posted their selfie. I deliberately shared my departure. I didn't sleep the entire night, not even a wink. Not because I was heartbroken, not yet. That moment hadn't come. Instead, I felt something akin to static. A sensation in my bones as if every part of me had learned a secret it couldn't process. She was already asleep when I got into bed, wearing the facade of everything's fine. As usual, she moved away from me, treating me like just a warm presence taking up space, not the man who once made her laugh until she cried. I stayed there, watching the ceiling change in the moonlight. Every 15 minutes, her phone would vibrate on the nightstand. I chose not to touch it. The image was etched deep within my mind, her lips brushing against someone else's jaw, his hand in her hair as if it belonged there. The day broke like a reprimand. She had left before sunrise. Wrote a note. Lunch with Becca. Returning later. Love you, Smileys. Love you. Smiling afterwards. Laughed loudly, like an unhinged man. Sat at my desk. Looked again at the flight confirmation. Prague, 6:15 p.m. One-way ticket. Didn't know why I selected Prague. Perhaps it was far enough. Maybe it didn't rhyme with deceit. Sent 3 emails. One to the boss. Immediate leave requested. One to my brother. Explanation later. Don't phone. And one to myself. Subject. Reminder. Body. She made her choice. She lied. Kept lying. Remember that when she weeps. Then I left the house. Drove aimlessly for hours. Not without direction, just drifting. Through areas seldom visited in years. Past parks where we picnicked. Past the lake where she spoke of wanting kids someday. Not immediately. Past our first apartment when we were still poor but joyful. At noon, I pulled over near her gym. Her vehicle wasn't there. Regardless, I waited. She appeared around 12:30, but she wasn't singular. Another man emerged from the passenger seat. He wore the same gold chain and bore the same arrogant, hollow smile. She chuckled at something he said and touched his arm. Guilt was nowhere to be found on her face, only a sense of familiarity. Too much familiarity. They stayed by her car for 5 minutes, standing close enough to touch. Then he kissed her. Not a casual peck, but a kiss laden with recollection and history. She guided him. Upon spotting my car, she hesitated. Our gazes locked across the parking lot. She didn't approach or acknowledge me. Instead, she spoke to him, got into the car, and drove off. He lingered behind, eyeing me as if I were the interloper. Amazingly, I didn't emerge, didn't protest, didn't lash out. Instead, I put the car in reverse and departed. That was when it transitioned from pain to understanding. The fracture widened into a fissure. I realized something that no promises, counselor, or anniversary could reverse. She had left long before she actually departed, too timid to admit it. The airport was silent, almost unsettling. I carried a single duffel bag on my shoulder, a boarding pass in my pocket, and uncertainty about what awaited me upon arrival. Yet for the first time in months, uncertainty felt superior to deceit. I leaned against the wall by gate C-19, my phone turned off, notifications muted, my thoughts heavy. And then she called. It was inevitable. The first ring I ignored, the second one too. But the third I picked up, not because I yearned to hear her voice, but to see what persona she would present this time. Jake, her voice trembled almost inaudibly. Where are you? I remained silent. She breathed shakily. I saw your post. Are you truly doing this? What on earth are you doing at the airport? I'm doing what you should have done months ago, I stated bluntly, taking a moment. Stop acting so theatrically. Her tone changed swiftly from panicked disdain to weary contempt when I asked for truthfulness or eye contact. So what now? You're merely escaping after making one error, I chuckled once. She remained silent. I rose, observing the endless rows of gates that resembled corridors filled with past decisions. You lied, I repeated. Not just in your words, but in your actions, your deceptions, and your tales. You told me you were in Portland. You kissed him in Miami. You claimed to love me. You stood before me and still chose him. Oh my goodness. You seem unhinged. Her voice had that whining tone. Now she was defensive and juvenile. It wasn't significant. It held no importance. That's the issue, I said. It didn't matter to you. I heard her breath quicken. Why Prague? She inquired at last. I needed a refuge. You wouldn't have pursued me here. Don't do this. She pleaded softly. Can we just talk? Come home. We'll work it out. No, you've already grasped the situation. I'm merely following suit. She fell quiet for a moment, leading me to assume she'd hung up. Then came the decisive blow. Your disregard for 6 years over a trivial photo left me stunned. No reply escaped me because it still eluded her comprehension. It wasn't the photograph, but the sequence of actions, evasion, laughter, deletions, and blame shifting that hurt. She'd ceased choosing me before ever opting for someone else. I terminated the call without a farewell or dramatic soliloquy, just a mute disconnection. 30 minutes later, the boarding call came. Stepping forward, I sought not peace nor healing, but space, fresh air, and tranquility. Prague offered all three in abundance. Prague enveloped me like an unyielding wave, its crisp, weighty air steeped in history and ancient stone. Narrow alleys twisted like hidden truths, and each corner seemed to murmur tales of those who, like myself, had strayed but discovered alternative paths. Spent my inaugural day meandering, with cobblestones coaxing recollections from me. It wasn't exploration-oriented, it was about fragmenting bit by bit in a city unfamiliar with me. That evening I stumbled upon a quaint bar nestled amid structures centuries old, a place characterized by its dark wood and misty atmosphere. No tourists here, only residents uninterested in inquiries, harboring their own sorrows. Ordered something potent and acrid to mirror my inner turmoil. The bartender appraised me with an expression hinting at familiarity with such melancholy, yet remained wordless about it. Perched in a corner, I sipped at my drink, my phone locked away in my pocket, and Emily's 3 calls since landing unanswered. What was I supposed to say? I apologized for catching her off guard. I apologized for being treated as insubstantial. I apologized for the mockery of our promises. Instead, I let the city muffle Emily's voice that echoed within me. I wandered the streets until dawn, the hushed pulse of life continuing around me, enhancing my solitude. Reflecting on countless mornings I'd awoken beside her, convinced all was well. Recalling nights she hid behind falsehoods, texting others while cloaked in a web of lies about that unintentional, damaging selfie. Yet it wasn't an oversight. It was her authentic self emerging through the fractures. I discovered another truth as well. I didn't just lose a spouse. I lost my delusion. Perhaps in the debris there lay something better, or maybe not. But for the first time, I was prepared to uncover this reality. The 5th day in Prague seemed more tranquil than the rest. Maybe it was merely me. Perched on the balcony of a compact Airbnb overlooking the Vltava River, I sipped burnt coffee from a cracked mug. The dawn's light cascaded across the water like liquid copper. At home, Emily would have commenced her daily ritual. Maybe she was lighting a disliked candle, perhaps deceiving someone else as she texted me, "Good morning, babe," with a yellow heart emoji, pretending the radiance from it concealed the decay underneath. She hadn't called again, only silence since the 3rd day. No messages, no insincere apologies, no pleas for forgiveness. The silence was louder than any words ever could be. I thought I'd feel liberated by now, or enraged, or something tangible and purposeful, but instead I felt insubstantial, as if I wasn't truly there. At midday, I unconsciously checked my email. One new message subject from Emily Harper. "We should talk." The content was brief, icy, businesslike. "Jake, I understand you need space and I won't pursue you. But when you're ready to act like an adult and discuss what occurred instead of fleeing around the world, let me know. For what it's worth, things between us haven't felt right for a long time. This wasn't part of my plan." You recognize that M isn't sorry, not acknowledging her actions. Instead, she displays the same cold form of passive-aggressive behavior she's been honing for a year. It feels as if I'm expected to validate my own betrayal, as if I were complicit in her choice to be with someone else while sharing my bed. I closed the laptop and did something I hadn't done in a while. I cried. Not loudly or messily, but slowly, silently. Tears that lingered too long before they finally fell, because there's a kind of pain that doesn't shout. It seeps. And that's exactly what she did. She seeped into every part of me, her voice echoing in my head. When I bought groceries, her reflection stared back at me in the mirror. When I erased her name from my contacts, but left it as emergency on that fateful night, I deleted a backup file on my phone, the one with our wedding photos. It wasn't anger. It wasn't retribution. It was liberation. She paraded their selfie like a trophy, as if she'd achieved something, as if she'd made her final move. But this is mine. Instead of a cry or argument, there was only a tranquil disappearance, a smooth severance. The day I ceased anticipating her feelings was the day I began inhaling differently. It wasn't an abrupt transformation. There were no thunderbolts or blazing missives. It was understated, the sort of emotional seismic shift that goes unnoticed until the aftershock. In Letna Park, I observed people going about lives untouched by despair. Children zoomed past on scooters. A pair locked lips beneath a giant metronome's shadow, and an elderly man played chess against himself, muttering in Czech. On a bench with no possessions, no device, only the urban din and the mental space where she used to be, I first verbalized it. She doesn't care. It wasn't resentment, just an observation. Emily had made her decision. Her quietness then was merely the last period. Not once did she argue or ask the appropriate questions. She didn't inquire. What can I do to rectify this? She didn't ask for my return home because she didn't aim to resolve the issue. Instead, she sought to rework it. She wanted to manipulate our narrative into a portrayal that transformed her from an antagonist to a misconstrued heroine. However, this strategy might have succeeded if I hadn't personally witnessed it. If I hadn't observed her laughing with him, the contrast between her laughter with me, she ended our marriage with a smirk, then attempted to pass the blame by saying, "Look what you made me do." Upon returning to the apartment, I penned something I never thought I would write: the divorce papers. This wasn't an act of destruction, but rather a response to the fact that she had already destroyed our relationship. Holding on to that debris was like clinging to a shattered picture frame when it has cut your hand. I gazed at the vacant fields on the grounds for dissolution, wondering if they provided an option for spiritual annihilation. I wrote irreconcilable differences, but in truth, what I meant was she ceased choosing me. 1. She opted for him initially and subsequently herself. I endorsed, digitized, and immediately transmitted it to her with the subject, "Your turn." No words of encouragement or clarification, only the discernible disintegration echoing what was past due. 2 hours later, she responded, "That's how things stand now. You surrender." I perused it, then erased it. An unintended selfie of them appeared on her profile. 3 days after sending the divorce papers, I forwarded them again. Emily phoned. Initially unwilling to respond, but curiosity is a treacherous entity. It doesn't knock. It slips in uninvited. Sitting by the chilly Prague flat window with its peeling edges and jittery radiator, I watched my phone vibrate until the sound grew intolerable. Then I picked up. She didn't greet me. Instead, she said, "So that's it." There was a pause, not the type awaiting absolution, the kind that tests your ability to empathize. "That's it," I replied, stunned. She let out a harsh laugh. "You're just going to toss everything aside as if it meant nothing." I didn't yell or express all my anger, but she discarded it anyway. As soon as she welcomed another man into her life and made him a permanent resident, she abandoned our marriage. She turned it into a weapon instead. That was her response. I told her, "You've been gradually leaving for some time now. I'm just the last one to depart." Her tone shifted. She began performing again, the act she employed to conceal the truth from me. "Jake, we had difficult months, but that doesn't make our relationship any less real. You were distanced too. Don't pretend this is all my fault." I almost smiled at her attempt to share the blame. The usual tactic, the application of shared guilt. I closed my eyes and visualized the selfie, her eyes gentle, his smug, a hint of him leaning in. And in that moment, I felt tranquil. "You can't rewrite this," I said firmly. "Not this time." "You're being callous," she retorted, cruelly even. "No," I countered. "Unfaithful," she lied to my face, "arranging weekends with another while I lay next to you." She feigned sleep as you texted him goodnight. Deceitful, she let me think all was well, just long enough to make a fool of me. After that, there was nothing left to say. She whispered, "You're not returning." "No," I retorted, "not even if I forget why I departed." She hung up without an apology or regret, leaving only the last flicker of a match. For a while, I sat still, neither crying nor trembling, just breathing. For peace doesn't always come like light through a window. Sometimes it arrives as an empty room and the realization that no one lies beside me in my bed. That night, she did not appear in my dreams or show up in a crowd, nor did I wake to find her beside me. The specter of her, the residue she left in my muscles and memory began to dissipate. But in its place emerged something else. In my dream, I yearned for the man I once was. The one who mended loose cabinet hinges late at night, unspoken about. The one who mastered her favorite risotto after her work crisis and text message. Tonight, I yearn for tenderness. The one who forgave too swiftly, trusted too blindly, stayed too long. I awoke with tears on my face, not from sorrow but from grief, for betrayal doesn't merely dissolve relationships, it murders the man within them. The tragic part is she'll never lament for him. To her, he was replaceable, a faceless figure she had already begun distancing herself from, long before another man encircled her in a hotel rooftop bar months later. That day, I made an unconventional choice. I got a haircut. Seemingly foolish, but the buzz of the clippers echoed a shedding of skin. The barber communicated through broken English, asking no questions. Simply nodded and said, "Fresh start," affirmed twice. Later, I walked until my legs ached, ascending hills, crossing bridges into alleyways adorned with graffiti and heavy smoke from cigarettes. Prague felt like my own exile, but that day it seemed less like punishment and more like the interlude between two vastly dissimilar lives. Back at the apartment, a new message arrived on my phone from Emily. Just 2 words. "I'm sorry." No punctuation, no background, merely those 2 words. I gazed at them for an extended period, not because I trusted them, but because I desired to. I wished to rewind time, wishing she hadn't done it. However, that version of her was gone. She posted their selfie as if it were a memento, a subtle confession. Now she aimed to clean up the blood with an apology scribbled on a paper towel. I chose not to respond. Instead, I opened a new note and penned this sentence: "You will not allow her to use sadness as a leash." Then I slept once more, still solitary, still wrathful, but no longer coaxing my memories to deceive me. I hadn't realized the extent of my transformation until I passed a quarrelsome couple on the street and remained unfazed. Her voice echoed shrill, gesturing wildly with trembling hands, her mascara verging on streaks. He remained stoic, arms crossed, radiating a disposition that conveyed this again. 6 months ago, I might have averted my gaze, feeling awkward for them or even empathizing more deeply with her. However, now all I perceived was the pattern, the act, the repugnant cycle of "you never," and I only did that because you. I didn't empathize with them. Instead, I contrasted myself with the past self, who once stood exactly where he stood, nodding hesitantly, attempting to endure an argument not even mine, as it had become more about Emily's survival than partnership or dialogue. Survival rather than collaboration, not communication, merely persevering through each conversation without being manipulated, gaslit, or cast in the role of her twisted story's antagonist. She excelled at that. Exceptionally crafty, she manipulated facts, stifling my intuition, leading me to doubt perceptions reminiscent of the day I discovered a hotel key in her purse, a key from no joint excursion we had shared. Challenged about it, she flippantly dismissed it as an old artifact, forgotten like a discarded grocery list. I nodded in agreement, still clinging to my faith in her narrative. However, standing in a place where her deceit couldn't transmit signals, I finally recognized the deception for what it was. It wasn't just betrayal. I was entombed within a tale she orchestrated. Gradually, one lie at a time, I excavated myself from the maze of falsehoods. That night, I accepted a cigarette, an object I had never smoked before. My neighbor offered it, and I took it not for pleasure but because I desired to grip something that burned truthfully. 2 drags later, I coughed violently, discarded it over the railing. Yet, the point wasn't the cigarette. It was the authenticity of its burn. It was evident that it caused pain, and it confessed this pain. Unlike Emily, she would smile when lying, cry when exposed, manipulate when overwhelmed. That night, she messaged again. "I'm not perfect, but I never intended to hurt you." I remained silent because the message held no significance when the wound was already open. It started pouring as realization struck, not a light drizzle, but rain that felt like the sky was erasing everything thought to be permanent. I walked through Old Town with my hood up and hands buried in my pockets, and then it dawned on me. Emily never loved me genuinely or completely. She cherished the feelings I elicited. She adored being admired. She appreciated being regarded as the focal point. But love is not attention. It's not a pedestal. It's choosing someone day in, day out, even on the mundane days, especially on those. She opted for excitement, mystery, shallow validation. She chose that man. I never knew his name. It made no difference. His name might have been Chad, Mason, or Derek with a K. What I witnessed was her surrendering herself to another, while I fabricated reasons for her absence from mine. That night, I stumbled upon the video once more. I didn't search for it. It remained hidden in my phone, buried within a secret folder where I had stored evidence, like a lawyer trying to convince a court that, yes, this was infidelity. Her soft, hushed laughter, his hand on her thigh, her murmur, "We shouldn't, but I don't care." Rewind, pause, replay. I watched it again, not to torment myself, but to verify something that wasn't merely delusional, that I didn't hallucinate it. that she genuinely seemed happier with him than she had with me for months. I erased it, not out of resilience, but out of exhaustion. I was tired of constructing a shrine to misery. I spent the night in bed, gazing at the cracked ceiling of the flat, and whispered to the silence, "You no longer have control over me." It wasn't just about Emily. It was about transforming myself to keep her, the supplicating version of me, the one who apologized, begged for fragments of affection, and deemed it a concession. He had vanished because the man she abandoned, the man I discovered in Prague, was no longer desperate. He was finished. The journey home was what ultimately shattered me. Not because I wanted to return, God, no, but because I recognized I had to. I hadn't communicated with her since that final message. I hadn't responded, hadn't typed, hadn't even drafted anything. And yet somehow her voice still reverberated in the quieter instances, like the lingering remnants of a fire extinguished long ago, but leaving its charred residue behind. I didn't return for her. I returned for closure. You can't seal 6 years of your life with digital ink and never confront the debris. The house seemed smaller, more frigid. The pillows were altered, fresher, as if she intended to replace everything I had touched without fully vacating. She wasn't there when I arrived, naturally not. She was absent when needed. Yet Teddy was there. Teddy, he came bounding over with his usual yarn of wagging tail as if nothing had shifted, as if I hadn't been fractured and mended while he dozed in rafters and waited for doors to unlatch. The room still carried a faint trace of her perfume, the one she abandoned wearing for me except for when she went out with friends. Her shoes lay by the door, her mail stacked on the counter. However, the entire space felt like a stage backdrop. I stepped into her bedroom, now mine, and perched at the foot of the bed. A letter sat on the nightstand, not an email or text. An actual letter, once folded, addressed to me. Jake, I recognize you'll abhor this. The theatrics of it, the hackneyed tale of a handwritten note. But I couldn't trust myself to converse. You always perceive my intentions when I speak. I did love you, perhaps not in the manner you deserved, perhaps not fully, but I did. I believe my inability to confront my misery stemmed from the sensation that I was letting down someone who had worked hard for what they deserved, not what followed. It wasn't premeditated, it wasn't a search for another. Yet he listened, and he made me feel understood. Not superior, not more, merely alive. This doesn't make it right. It makes it worse. I should have come to you, told the truth when it mattered, but I was a coward. You didn't deserve the pain I inflicted upon you. I don't seek forgiveness. I just hope one day you find the tranquility I couldn't provide. Emily. I read it once, then again. Yet I felt nothing. No anger, no relief, only calmness. She accidentally posted their selfie, but intentionally wrote this letter. And in some way, they both conveyed the same message. I wasn't yours to possess. I didn't destroy the letter, didn't tear it, or crumple it dramatically for a cathartic, immediate resolution. No. Instead, I preserved it. I folded it in half and placed it in a drawer, closing it gently. Not as a memento, but as documentation. A receipt. Evidence that she had admitted the truth, even if it was too late to matter. That night, I gathered the remaining pieces of my belongings from the house. Clothes, books, passport, Teddy's leash. The rest could decay. She could keep the house. The untouched wine glasses, the wedding photos. They were no longer needed by me. As I left, I paused in the hallway, that narrow space between the kitchen and bedroom where we used to slow dance after dinner, tipsy on cheap red wine. I recalled the night she stood against the doorframe and said, "I hope we're always like this." We weren't. It wasn't about time, money, or stress. It was her preference for another's laughter over mine, her choice of excitement over honesty. You don't accidentally forget someone you love. You don't accidentally post a picture of a man's hand on your thigh. You don't unintentionally end a marriage. You opt for it repeatedly, and she did so. As I left Teddy following me, I didn't glance back once. There was no need to witness the destruction as it had already happened. In Prague, I felt like a phantom. Now, I felt like a man again, albeit bruised yet standing tall. The final lesson about betrayal is this. Revenge isn't its conclusion. It doesn't require it, because the deceiver has to keep deceiving. The broken truster must live with that resonance in every room. However, the one who departs, he finds serenity. To those who need to hear it, If she laughs while she lies, if she deletes truth and calls it an oversight, if you feel like you're pleading just to be acknowledged, leave. Make your departure intentional, because freedom doesn't plead and tranquility never cheats. Jake.